Today, we're diving into a huge Supreme Court decision, one that really gets to the heart of presidential power. And it all comes down to a really simple but incredibly important question. So can a president, all by themselves, just decide to slap a nationwide tax on everyone in the form of tariffs? Now, this isn't just some classroom debate. The Supreme Court had to decide if one single law gave the president the power to tax trillions of dollars in goods. The money involved here was just staggering.
I mean, how high are we talking? At their absolute peak, the tariff rate on a lot of goods shot up to a whopping 145%. Yeah, you heard that right. This wasn't some minor tweak. This was a massive economic move that hit small businesses and regular consumers right in the wallet. So what law was used to even try and justify this?
Well, it all comes down to a law from 1977 called IEEPA.
Okay, so IEEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, it gives the president a toolkit of economic powers to deal with foreign threats. But, and this is a big but, only after declaring a national emergency. In this situation, two emergencies were cited: illegal drug trafficking and big trade deficits. But let's take a closer look at what the law actually says the president can do. So if you actually read the text, you get a list of action words: investigate, block, regulate, and so on. But look closely. You see what's missing? The words tax, tariff, or duty are nowhere to be found. And that little omission, that's what this entire legal battle is all about. And that missing word set the stage for a huge constitutional showdown over who really controls the nation's wallet.
A whole group of small businesses in 12 different states got together and sued. They basically argued that the president was using a power he just doesn't have, that this was a massive overreach that goes against the very design of our government. And their whole argument was built on the plain, simple words of the Constitution itself.
Right here, Article 1, Section 8. It's literally the first power the Constitution gives the Congress. And it couldn't be clearer. The power to tax belongs to them. The folks who sued were saying the president had essentially just grabbed this power for himself.
And you know this wasn't some accident. This fantastic quote from James Madison shows you exactly what the founders were thinking. They intentionally gave Congress, and only Congress, access to the pockets of the people. Why? To make sure the president couldn't just raise money whenever he wanted. So with that history on the table, what did the Supreme Court have to say? All right, the moment of truth. How did the 9 justices decide this high-stakes constitutional fight?
The court's answer was incredibly direct. Nope. The International Emergency Economic Powers Act does not give the president the power to impose tariffs. End of story.
And it wasn't a close call either. The final vote was 6-3, a really decisive majority that actually crossed the usual ideological divides. But you know, the most fascinating part isn't just what they decided, it's why they decided it.
So let's really get into the nitty-gritty of the legal thinking behind this major decision. So a huge piece of this was a legal idea called the Major Questions Doctrine. Now it sounds complicated, but it's pretty simple. For everyday stuff, Congress can write laws with broad language. But when it comes to massive country-changing powers, like say giving the president the ability to tax trillions in trade, Congress has to spell it out in crystal clear language. You just can't hide an elephant in a mouse hole. So why did the court see this as a major question? Well, first, the economic and political stakes were just off the charts. Second, this would have totally transformed the president's power over the entire economy. And this is a big one. Look at the history. For 50 years, no president had ever used IEEPA this way. Plus, anytime Congress has given away tariff power in other laws, it always uses super specific language and puts strict limits on it, none of which is in IEEPA. The court also just looked at the words themselves. They said, look, the power to regulate something is not the same as the power to tax it. Sure, a tax can be a way to regulate things, but that super important fundamental power to tax can't just be assumed to be hiding inside the general word regulate. They're two different things. So even though you had 6 justices all agreeing on the final result, they kind of took different roads to get there. The entire majority of 6 agreed that the plain text of IEEPA just doesn't say tariffs. A smaller group of 3 within that majority also really leaned on that major questions idea. Then you had the 3 dissenters, who basically argued that in a national emergency, a word like regulate should be read broadly enough to include something like tariffs. Okay, so let's zoom out. What's the big picture here? Why should you care about this ruling beyond these specific tariffs? Because really, this case was never just about money or trade. It was a fundamental test of the separation of powers. It asked a core question.
Where does Congress's power end and the president's begin, especially when a president declares an emergency?
So here's the bottom line, the big takeaways. First, this ruling slams the gavel down and says Congress, and only Congress, has the power of the purse. Second, it draws a really clear line, saying that not even a national emergency gives a president a blank check to control the economy. And third, it sets a major precedent. It's a signal to any administration that if you're going to claim some massive new power, you better have a law that spells it out loud and clear.
At the end of the day, the court drew a firm line in the sand on presidential power. But it leaves us all with a pretty big question to think about. The next time there's a national emergency, how is this new precedent going to be tested, and where exactly will that line be drawn next?
Not sure which skills will move you forward? Skill Tree Learning makes it clear. From SAP and Microsoft to data analytics and generative AI,